This, it always says it's streaming,
Uh,
but then it's actually live. Well, I'm Val Campbell,
yeah.
and this is the Saturday morning show with myself and Brad Krantz. We are here again. We made it another week, Brad.
Yes, we did. An interesting week on a lot of levels, for sure.
And that's why we're here and why we're excited to talk to Paul Carpenter. And Paul, Brad asked me a question. He said, how do you know Paul? And I thought, how do I know Paul? Did we connect through Freddie? Paul's got a little bit of a bad internet connection there.
Through Facebook, actually, through mutual friends on Facebook.
Mutual friends, but I was thinking maybe one of those mutual friends might have been Freddie Paquin. Did you know Freddie? Paul, boy, we're having a tough morning there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. There you go.
There we go. That seems a little better. Paul's got to reinvent his internet there.
Thank you. Yes. I gotta get my teenage nephews to consult with me on some IT issues, I think.
There we go. So this has been a crazy week, really monumental in a lot of ways. And so I'll just throw out two things, of course. First off, the Democrats picked Kamala Harris from California, senator from California, to be Joe Biden's running mate.
Yeah.
And I very much said that specifically, didn't I? I said the Democrats have picked Kamala Harris to be Joe Biden's running mate. And also, another major event here, that I don't think is getting anywhere near the publicity that it warrants, is that the Trump administration brokered a peace agreement between the United Arab Emirates and Israel. And that's really significant for a lot of different reasons. And we think that that's probably the first of many of those deals that are going to come together with the Gulf states in the Middle East. So Paul, why don't you introduce yourself now that your internet connection seems to be a little stable? Introduce yourself, please, and tell our fans about yourself.
Well, I'm a lawyer. I'm a retired lawyer now. Small town Columbia Station. Lived in a lot of my life, except for some time in Florida.
Yeah, we're having a really tough connection.
And came back for various reasons, for family reasons, for some health reasons, and because my father at the time needed help. And so I have the the degree in political science and the degree in law. So I'm kind of I was called by a college advisor who knew me well, a political animal. So I've always kind of
Paul, we're really struggling on this connection. Is there any way, can you try and pop back out and reconnect again? Let's see if we can improve that, because you're breaking up pretty bad. Let's see if we can get Paul's connection cleaned up again.
Hey, Val, we did have another significant event here in Seattle, and that was the resignation of Seattle Police Chief Carmen Best. So that was kind of monumental interest. I don't hear the racism card being played because she's black, that, you know, the city council wanted to cut her pay and all that. That I think actually there's a video, I didn't watch it all. Al Sharpton had something to say about it, and actually maybe something somewhat halfway intelligent on that. But there doesn't seem to be backlash on the left for a black police chief getting a significant pay cut. I understood 40%, and nobody seems to be claiming discrimination on that I've heard.
Well, I think that this is probably going to be one of the more political Saturday morning shows. Let's see if we can get Paul added back in. Are you there again?
Yeah,
Paul?
I'm here.
Welcome back.
Oh, that seems to be a little bit better. We were just talking about the fact that the police chief in Seattle resigned this week, Chief Best, and she was really good, I think. And that actually... Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, I was surprised it took her this long, actually, to resign.
Yeah, she battled with the city council and the regional political structures all summer. So Paul, tell us, see if we can keep an internet connection here long enough that we can pick your brain. How do you feel about this situation?
Yes.
How do you feel this situation in the Middle East with between Israel and the UAE? That's a real powerful agreement there.
Yes, it is. And I noticed the Biden campaign immediately tried to give Biden a little credit for it. But
I saw that too. It's hilarious.
But I think I agree with the person who observed that if Biden worked on it, he didn't complete the deal. So and Mr. Trump and his son-in-law did. So you know, I don't see actually between Israel and the states if the Trump administration continues. But if the Democrats get in and start to move toward peace or appeasement with Iran, I think those deals are going to get squashed.
Yeah, and of course, this, the situation between the UAE being probably the most progressive of the Gulf states there. They are an economic powerhouse, obviously. They are a tourist attraction. They are a global tourist attraction. And also the technology sector there is very, very strong, as is the technology sector in Israel is very strong. So this creates an alliance between two very separate cultures based on their ability to conduct commerce now, because they've got full recognition of each other. And this is the first time, I think, that we've had one of those Gulf states have full recognition of Israel. And that's really significant because these are two economic powerhouses in the region that now that they're combined have the ability to do business back and forth, and that's going to pull in. In fact, I even heard a discussion that maybe the the Saudi Arabian government might enter into a similar deal with that. How do you feel about that, Paul?
Well, I think the Trump administration and the Trump family background, being in commerce, in business, in international economics, does help that here. I think I think this is an economic deal that they figure that the UAE and maybe even Saudi Arabia might figure that they're
Yeah, we're really having connection problems here. So, Paul, let's work on this. And the other thing I could think of is let's work on this and try and get you back again if we can get a little bit of a stronger connection. Because I'd love to hear what you say. I'm going to go ahead and pop him out so that we can continue. Paul is really strong in Facebook, and he leads some of the best discussions that I've seen out there. And unfortunately, his internet connection today is just not helping us. Just let me send him a message. Anyway, thanks everybody for bearing with us. I love bringing in people who have some of that perspective and expertise. And unfortunately, in this situation, technology is not our friend today. So we know that moving forward in the Middle East, that the world is growing less reliant on their petroleum. There's a lot of other. Paul's trying to pop back in here. Let's see if we can connect.
Okay.
Let's try this. Let's try this one more time and see if we can connect better.
Yes. Okay.
So I was just talking about the fact that moving forward, that we know that in the Middle East that the world is growing less reliant on their petroleum. So they still have a valuable resource there, but they're using those income streams to develop other industry. And one of those obvious industries that they can benefit from is technology. They've got the money to be able to buy technology. And to buy the kinds of employees and brain power to do that. And Israel is kind of known as the Silicon Valley of the Middle East, and the UAE is really developing a lot of that same kind of technology possibility. So maybe we can expect to see some of these other nations join in there. But as Paul said, it was very funny, I thought, because almost instantly the Biden campaign jumped in and tried to make it sound like it was his idea, that he and Barack Obama made this happen.
Yeah. It's it's political season, so
right.
Yeah.
So everything that happens, they have to try and paint it to benefit them, and I sort of understand that. But this is a big reach. This is a big reach because Barack Obama is the guy that sent a pallet load of cash to Iran. And that's obviously not conducive to this kind of a deal. So anyway, this for people that are watching it and maybe not so really tuned into all of this, because God knows the media didn't really, help everybody, did they? This deal was largely brokered and coordinated through the Trump administration, and Jared Kushner, being Jewish, played a big role in this, right, Paul? We're still struggling with Paul's streaming here. I really wanted to get his feedback on this stuff, and it's just not happening today. So we're going to have to see if we can work on Paul's IT situation and see if we can get him back sometime. So anyway, Brad, were you able to pick up and follow on any of these developments in the last couple of days? I know it's been pretty fast moving.
Well, I'm getting a little more attuned. I am not all into the Middle East stuff like you, so I really don't have an informed opinion. But some of the things I have found interesting were that in Biden introducing Harris, he seemed to be trying to blame. I mean, he was blaming Trump for the economy via the coronavirus. Like somehow Trump brought on this economic malaise, to use Jimmy Carter's term, when it's all about the shutdown. A lot of these are Democratic states. Nothing was mentioned about that. And all the stuff I've seen from him, there's some question about his mental acuity. Where is he? Is he in dementia or Alzheimer? He came across really good. I was shocked. I was expecting him to just kind of lose his thought train. He didn't. Maybe and I hate to say this, but it's political season, like Paul said. Maybe they got him on the right meds or something, and he was lucid for the amount of time he needed to do the speech. But I understand Harris to be very left-wing, almost anti-constitutional, which I find. I'm not a big fan of politicians because they lie, and this was a showcase, Biden and Harris, of lying through their teeth to try to prop them. So it wasn't as much about themselves and their campaign as it was to slam Trump and throw him under the bus on every occasion. I actually watched it. Joni and I watched it. And I don't usually watch that stuff because I have a hard time keeping my mouth shut when I see, and as I tell my wife, seeing so much stupidity uttered, I have a hard time not saying, hey, wait a minute, no, that. So that's my 5 cents worth on that for the time being.
Yeah, last couple of weeks, we really talked a little bit about this selection process. Who did we think was likely to be the nominee? And, we talked about Kamala Harris. We talked about Susan Rice as another possibility. And neither one of those candidates really concerned me from an election standpoint. And I will go out there, and I'm just going to publicly say that I do think that a change in administration would be a mistake for many, many different reasons. But just one of those examples is this situation that we see right now, that we now have recognition and an agreement, an economic agreement between two of the most powerful nations in the Middle East, and that would not have happened. It didn't happen under 8 years of that administration before. And Joe Biden has made it clear that he looks at this as the Biden-Obama administration, as he called it, right? That he's trying to continue the restructuring of the United States and the restructuring of the vision of this country that Barack Obama started, and the change, and he wants to continue that. So what this means is a slide to the right or the left even more and more, right? And I think that's what you're alluding.
Well, we've seen it more than ever. I'm usually more of an independent. I will just say I'm probably I didn't vote for Trump last time for a variety of reasons, but given the current field and the current state of things, I would probably say, and I haven't made a 100% decision on this, that I probably will vote for Trump. But yeah, with the rise again or surge of Bernieism, Bernie socialism, which is not really a true socialist either, and all these really left-wing candidates. I think we saw a field that was further left than we've ever seen. I think it makes Hillary Clinton look a bit like a moderate. But now with Kamala Harris, and I've heard people, I've been listening to your guy, Ben Shapiro. Okay. And I think he's right. And other pundits I've heard say that Harris was only selected because she's black and she's a woman.
I think that there's an interesting.
We could talk about that. People won't like that, but I'm hearing a lot of people say those are the main reasons, and that's a poor reason to select a political candidate. I don't care what side you're on, is because of their sex and their race.
Well, I think that there's a couple of factors there. That's true, because he painted himself into a corner, didn't he? But the interesting part about this is, the racial card that was played. I mean, her father's Jamaican, her mother's Indian, East Indian. So then everybody stepped out here, and even people in the black community now are stepping out saying, wait a minute, this is not, she might be a person of color, whatever exactly that means.
Yeah.
But she's not African American.
No, that's why when they were calling her black, I kept going, hey, hold on, wait a minute. Where's this connection? Why is she black? Why is she not a person of color? I'm not. And a lot of other people start bringing up that too. I said, I'm just the kind of person, I see this and go, wait a minute, your dad's Jamaican, your mom's Indian. How are you black? Well,
and maybe this is a slide towards person of color, because when she was elected to the Senate, she was promoted as the first Indian American. So regardless of that, though, we see someone who's very willing to shift her policies and procedures. And like I said, setting aside that racial component or even the gender component and looking at this from an election standpoint, I felt that the opposition people on the Trump campaign, the people that are tasked with the issue of, okay, now what are we going to present to the public? What do we need to dig up on this person, right? I mean, that's kind of what the opposition people do. They get in, they look, and they say, okay, how are we going to exploit? Where's the weaknesses? How are we going to exploit that? They didn't even have to look for this gal. She's got a half a dozen things there that 20 years ago would have been disqualifications. We know we lived in a time when there were people running for political parties that were hugely popular, and then all of a sudden one of these things would come out and boom, they'd be gone in a week.
Yeah, the reporting of this stuff has really changed. Interestingly, I was just watching a historical segment. It wasn't so much an expose on John F. Kennedy and his many affairs, and even then, he was pushing the envelope, but the media pretty much kept a lot of things that he did under wraps. And J. Edgar Hoover too. J. Edgar Hoover had he had dirt on everybody in Washington, D.C. I've read a biography on him. He was a guy that was extremely powerful because he had dirt on everybody, but basically they didn't allow certain stuff to come out that today all the tabloids were writing about it. The stories were quashed back then by Attorney General Robert Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, and they have that power. Today you can't do that. You got too many media outlets, you got social media, you can't keep this stuff under wraps. But I heard somebody say, it was probably Ben Shapiro, that this is going to be a campaign against Trump, against Harris. Mm-hmm. So, and again, I'm not a big political guy, really not. I'm kind of jumping into some of this now just to see what's going on. It's coming up, but I see a country that's at least never more divided than I've seen in my 60 years, even going back to the Vietnam War days. But this is really the ideologies. I used to say the Democrat and Republican Party were, George Wallace said there's not a dime's worth of difference between them. And I think he was probably right. But now the Democratic Party shifted so far left. I can't support, even if I detested Trump, I will say, and I'm not saying I do, but I couldn't vote for Biden and Harris. Just your ideology is too far left, even Marxist, to the tinges of Marxism, which again doesn't work. And a lot of people don't understand the grounding of Marxism, and we could get into a whole discussion on that. But it's scary. It frankly scares me. Biden's mental capacity or incapacity, but Harris's really left-leaning ideologies. Is she really a person that should be the vice president and the president in waiting?
You know, one of the interesting aspects of this, and I think nobody's going to come here and present that either party, if they're politicians, there's how do I want to say this? they aren't known for being consistent all the time. They shift with wherever the wind blows, and that mostly they're willing to do just about anything to stay in power.
Yeah,
okay.
Or to get elected,
to get an election, to get funding, to sell their influence. That is the nature of politics. It's a very dirty business.
Yeah.
But among that, Kamala Harris has been particularly dirty. And there's data on this. There's evidence on this. And it's one of the reasons that I think it's so interesting. Both her and Susan Rice have that in common, is that there's specific stuff out there. There's video footage. There's anecdotal, commonly accepted anecdotal stuff that is going to be brought out now in this election. And we saw it within hours. Obviously, they've been preparing for weeks, right? What if she's chosen? What if Susan Rice is chosen? What if Michelle Obama stepped into the thing in some way? I'm still not completely convinced that Biden is going to come out of the convention as the candidate. I think it's maybe that's a 20%.
He's got the name recognition, if nothing else. He was VP for 8 years, but he's got the name recognition. Harris is really, I knew very little about her. I didn't watch really any of the debates last year. Again, I'm not ignorant, but I'm just not. If I can use this term, I hate that politics has devolved into a pissing contest. There's very little valuable dialogue, discussion. We go back to the Lincoln Douglas debates. I mean, most of it's just tit for tat, and I find that just moronic in trying to make an informed political decision. You're just throwing dirt at each other, and you expect us to sit there and go, well, who got the most dirt on him? Okay, then I'm voting for the other guy. And I go, where's the substance? We've moved beyond talking about their actual policies to where this is just an ad hominem attacks. Really, it's just let's attack the character of the other person. Let's not get into what they really believe. And I'm a kind of guy, I don't like that you're offending my intelligence when you do that.
You would hope philosophically that the rise of media would encourage debate, would encourage information and accuracy. Instead, what we've seen, and let's go back in contrast to 150 years ago, when you saw two candidates on a train coming through town, and they would get out and debate and speak to the issues. And these were educated people who were great communicators more often than not. And these speeches, these debates have become part of our history, where you read these and you go, where are the people today who speak like this? We don't develop our thoughts in verbal communication very much. Now we're involved in imagery. The media has become a theater.
Go back and read Marshall McLuhan's Understanding Media. His famous phrase, the medium is the message. I'll say, devolved there, at least over the last dozen to maybe 20 years, maybe more, where, yeah, there's very little substance, but everything's about the video. And can you catch this person in some gaffe or some contradiction? But I think we've lost the ability, and I'm going to say it, to think critically about these messages. I am a critical thinker. I am immensely annoyed at people that are just in pandering stupidity, nonsense. We devolved to the 30-second soundbite, and that's considered substantive. And I go, no, stop. What do they really believe? And I don't say what do they, to what they're telling me, but what are they really going to do? I want to hear. We could get in a whole discussion on this. I mean, go back, tell people, go back and read Marshall McLuhan's Understanding Media. I did 30 plus years ago, very helpful resource. But our technology has evolved at such a fast pace now. I think it's become the message, and we don't even know what the real message is anymore. We're tied up into the media, the social media clips, the sound bites, the gaffes, and here we are.
Well, and you hit the two sides of this. First off, the substance isn't being delivered. The other side of the equation is, if it was, people don't appreciate it or even have the ability, the intellectual ability to really drill down and understand it. I'm not saying that there's nobody out there that does, and I just made a lot of people angry, but I'm just going to give you an example that the debates today actually are moderated by people who are more interested in sensationalizing and perhaps protecting certain of the candidates involved. Look at how controversial this moderation piece is, where people come and they ask fluff questions. They're limiting, you've got 60 seconds to respond to this or something like that. I mean, it's how do you develop a complex thought in 60 seconds? So now you've got a situation, and this was true in the last presidential election on both sides, where you actually had people there who were capable and experienced and able to discuss complex subjects. And I've got two of them that pop into my mind, just on both, one on each side. And yet they were instantly reduced to, you're ugly. And everybody goes, yay, something about, some, as you said, almost an ad hominem or some kind of a sensational personal attack or something like that. And this became the nature, entertainment, elections as entertainment, theater, image. And so for the last 20 years at least, maybe before that, we have. What was that?
I'm going to look for a book. Here we go.
We have been electing presidents based on the image that they represent.
I want to recommend Neil Postman's "Amusing Ourselves to Death," written in 1986. It's a little bit dated because you didn't have the internet, but Public Discourse in the Age of Show Business. It's still, in my mind, spot on, Val. I mean, his critique of public discourse, and that's why I can't watch debates. There's nothing substantive in there for me to listen to. I hate to be crude, but it's a pissing contest. You've got biased, quote, moderators that want to diss on the other candidate and vice versa. There's nothing substantive, and you can throw tomatoes at me. There is nothing substantive in our current political debates that is worthwhile for me to spend my time watching. Sorry, not sorry.
So this brings up a question. Are we going to have presidential debates? We're all revved up for a Pence-Harris debate, right? They're saying, they can't wait to get at each other. And I think that that's actually going to be somewhat of an interesting debate, because you have two dramatically different personalities here, don't you?
You do. Pence is very, conservative, Christian, very mild. I mean, he was probably the best pick for Trump. He's a guy, you can't really find anything wrong with him. Him and Harris are going to be like night and day. But yeah, I think what I'm understanding with Trump and Biden is Biden's team. I think they're scared. I've seen enough gaffes of Biden that it really leads me to question where he's at mentally. And I don't think you can just sweep that under a rug and say, No, I've seen too many of them. That's why I was very surprised in his speech introducing Harris. But him and Trump debating he could.
Well, obviously, you're in that situation. You're obviously in a position where he'd been preparing for weeks for that. It was very carefully scripted. And
prompters on both sides.
And and obviously he was grilled and grilled and grilled. Do not leave the script. Don't go do this. You know, because again, ad-libbing is not his friend. And here we have an interesting dichotomy. I was so frustrated yesterday. Ems and I were going out to do some grocery shopping, going out to dinner, and there was something that came on the news that Trump did, and I was like, I'm so mad. It's like, you know, if anybody thinks that I'm a Trump apologist, you ought to know me better than that by now, because I've got this love-hate relationship with the guy. He does something brilliant, and then he immediately follows up with saying something idiotic. I'm sorry. It's just, you know,
that's his biggest downfall. There's a lot of, if he just would quit talking or quit tweeting, I think he'd do a lot better.
Yeah. I don't know how you could erase that, because on one hand, he brokers something that's truly historic in the history of the world. He brokered this. This is potentially on the order of brokering that initial peace deal in the Middle East, or this is potentially on the nature of Reagan collapsing the Iron Curtain. And this is that kind of monumental achievement. And then he follows it up by saying something silly about Kamala Harris. And I just felt like you just took your asset and you threw it away. You didn't focus on this great thing. You went and chased down a rabbit hole on something that absolutely gave her power. You gave her power. So I've got that frustration, because I am not a Biden fan. Never have been. Before he ever ran for VP, I thought the guy was a stooge. Okay, and he is a stooge.
Well, you've been in politics for 40 years, and just my viewpoint, you've done enough damage. It's time to stop. You are not part of any solution. You're part of the problem. Please step aside. And they keep recycling the same people over and over for decades, and we get the same old, which Trump wasn't, and I still think is a bit of an outsider. But I'm more concerned now, I will say, in my 60 years of this upcoming election than I ever have been, just because all the things going on from COVID, the shutdown, which we could spend a whole episode talking about that, what's happening here in our own city of Seattle, with the extreme leftist move, and I'll say the dereliction of duty by the mayor and the city council. And then now we've got the leftist politics of the Democrat Party being shoved at us. I don't know how many Democrat supporters are actually seeing through some of this and going, these people shouldn't be elected to office.
I do believe that you've got a portion. I don't know if that's 40% or what, but it's sizable, I believe, that are not hardcore leftists. They're liberal. But now they're looking at this and they're saying, wait a minute, I didn't really buy into burning down the city. I didn't buy into a permanent closure of the downtown business sector. Because they did have a demonstration here in the last week, and I think it was fairly sizable. I can't remember the numbers. I don't know if I heard the numbers, but it was a lot of people, tens of thousands, I believe, that were support the blue. You know, don't reduce the numbers.
I know people that went to that. It was peaceful. There was no property damage and nobody was arrested. And the media didn't really report on that.
And this is not, these weren't, as I understand it, these were not necessarily a Republican group or whatever. These were just citizens that were frustrated, maybe representing some degree of both sides of the political spectrum, frustrated at what they see going on in Seattle. So, one of the things that really intrigues me about this coming up, though, is this idea of presidential elections. How do you have a presidential election? I'm sorry, debates. How do you have a presidential election without actually having the two people debate? And I think, is it not pretty much figured out now that they got to have one? They're going to have one debate, one presidential debate. And I think that there's a lot riding on that. And I think both campaigns know that. The Trump campaign cannot wait to get Biden on a stage. You know that. But I think that's a big deal. Somebody asked me the other day, well, how's it going to go, or what's going to go? And I told him, I said, I have no idea. I have this feeling that Trump's going to win in a landslide because there's so much dirt on the other side. See, everything is out there about Trump. You know his strengths. You hate him or you don't hate him. Mm-hmm. But after what the Democrats have done going after the guy for the last 3 years, I don't think there's any October surprise.
No, I've never seen the networks, and again, I'm not a big network. I don't spend my days watching Fox News, but CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC. You know, I've heard and I've seen this. CNN could basically be called the anti-Trump network. That's all they do. You know, they hammer against him. It's gone from being just reporting the news to being biased in what you're trying to do, and it just becomes a pissing contest. And as an American, I'm sick and tired of that. I don't tune into that. You lose me when you start doing that, because there's zero substance in that. It's all ad hominem attack. How bad can we smear the other person, the other party? And let's not really talk about issues that matter to you and me as Americans. Let's just see who has the least amount of dirt, or who isn't as big of a scumbag as the other. And that's how we elect people to office. That's sad. Yeah. That's really sad.
I think we've got this interesting situation in the United States right now. And I'm going to just touch on a little bit of this subject that's been talked about and shared around in different places. If people want to go out and do some research, they're going to be able to find information. But for decades, at the minimum, decades, the United States government has been operating a criminal organization. And every once in a while, people get glimpses into this. The Fast and Furious debacle under the Obama administration illustrated how the CIA and the Department of Justice were actually running guns, international gun running operation out of our government. And you all of a sudden people caught a glimpse of this. And I don't know, by the way, I don't know how many people are aware, but the Mexican government is actually right now trying to pursue a lawsuit against the United States for running guns in, the United States government running guns in and providing weapons to the drug cartels. Now, I want everybody just to think about that the Mexican government actually has evidence, and there's nobody here that can doubt this, actually have evidence that the federal government of the United States was providing guns and ammunition to the drug cartels that in turn were used to come back and kill American law enforcement people. And this is just the start of it, this whole pedophile ring that literally the CIA and Department of Justice are operating sex trafficking rings and drug rings in order to create money, but more to create influence, to entrap and get these politicians, whatever their vice is, whatever their situation is, to get dirt on them, to set them up and get them in compromising positions so that they can influence them. And this is the deep state. This is the shadow government that we're complaining about. Why do I bring this up? I think it's clear that Trump was elected not because of his great political acumen, because he's had struggles politically. Probably not because he's the guy that you'd most want to invite to your barbecue dinner, but because he's not part of that deep state. And it's obvious the way that he speaks about all of them and the way that he goes after them personally, that people instinctively and sometimes evidentially know that this guy's not one of those deep state criminals. And it's the hope that he will persevere and break that up, because I think most people understand that we have several existential threats in this country. We might not make it the next 30 years. This country very well might not exist in 30 years. But if it has any hope, the hope has to be by breaking up these criminal organizations and by getting some kind of term limitations in place, by getting some campaign reform in place. And Trump represents that group of people, that large group of people in the United States that hate what the government has become.
Well, and I think, Val, just from my standpoint, I don't consider this ultra like far right wing conspiracy theory or stuff, but I think we have to realize that there's a lot of stuff our government has done for years that we know very little about. So our government's not this altruistic, great, everything they do is wonderful and they always have people's, best interests at heart. No, they don't. There's a lot of stuff our government does that is shameful. And this is part of what causes this is because our government has become so powerful that they are basically not accountable to us as the people anymore. They can do and I'll just say this, they can do what they damn well please, and they do. And they're getting away with it. And that's what's bothered me for years is we have a stranglehold of two parties that basically would do little to move us forward, but we have a government that's so deeply entrenched. Look at how the NSA can listen in on to any and every conversation. So don't mention words like terrorist bombing or something like that, because they'll pick us up. But guys, the threat of an all-powerful government was what our founding fathers were trying to protect us from. And despite the three branches of government, the judicial, legislative, and losing Joe Biden moment here. The government still they are all powerful. Look at how they control everything. We can get into the discussion of the Fed, an organization that has no political accountability, that's not part of our Constitution. They have absolute control over what happens in our economy. And most people know nothing about it because they don't know, they haven't read anything about it. And to think that it's naive to think that our government can't do this stuff and that it isn't, we got to wake up as Americans. That's why I said, stop watching insubstantive debates, start doing your research, start reading, start looking and finding out what's really going on. Educate yourselves before it's too late.
I'll throw out there, you mentioned the Fed. I'm going to throw out three more government agencies that tremendously need to be reformed or eliminated. The first off right now is the Food and Drug Administration. What a bureaucratic mess this is. What a controlled, contrived organization it is. This is set up and it's presented as, well, we're going to protect the American people against bad drugs and things like that. What it's actually become is a mechanism to control us for the purpose of promoting what the drug companies want us to do. Big
pharma.
To be able for them to make money.
Look at all the plethora of ads on TV. They're all about drugs. I mean, I kind of look at, gosh, maybe I should take all these drugs. There's a new one every week coming out that's being promoted. They're getting our whole society on drugs from A to Z.
Well, I'm going to share one headline right now coming out of Western Journal, and I looked over here to pull this up so I read it. It says, Michigan hospital tries to treat patients with hydroxychloroquine, but the FDA says no. So here you've got hospitals, you've got doctors all over the world. I just read a study, and there were more than 2,000 doctors around the world that listed this as their number one course of treatment that they were using successfully against COVID-19. And you've got study after study that's being promoted out there now that says that this hydroxychloroquine is not effective. And I will tell you, I've pulled up some of these major studies and read them, the one out of France, the one out of Minnesota. And those studies, they didn't even use the drug as recommended. They might as well have dissolved it into a liquid and painted it on the bottoms of people's feet. They didn't use it as recommended. Then they come out and say, well, it wasn't effective. It's ridiculous. And the headlines get taken and run with, okay? So that's a major passion of mine, that doctors and patients should be making these decisions, not the Food and Drug Administration. You've got a 65-year-old drug with more than 1 billion prescriptions written globally. It's been on safe lists. It's sold over the counter in countries. But the Food and Drug Administration is preventing your doctor from prescribing that to you because they want to steer you in another direction. That's criminal. And that organization needs to be remarkably changed. But it won't be changed unless you maintain this course of disrupting that state. Here's another one. Department of Education. We have a federal Department of Education. Why do we need a federal Department of Education? Isn't your local school board totally responsive to the population there, that they can decide what textbooks and things and the courses of study for your children? So there's one. We could talk about the ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, and some of the horrible things we've seen with them. Right? Go ahead.
Department of Homeland Security. I had a gentleman I knew that was an ex-FBI agent, and I had a conversation with him. I said, Eric, don't we already have all the existing law enforcement in place? Why on earth? And this was started with the Bush administration. Last time I checked, they were running about a $70 billion a year budget, growing. I worked for Walgreens Drugs, who is a 105, 110-year-old company. It took them that long to get to 70 billion. In less than like a decade, you had a new created organization, government agency that was sucking in, eating $70 billion a year of resources. Why? And they haven't found one terrorist yet either, by the way. Not one.
A lot of these agencies become bureaucracies for the sake of promoting their bureaucracy.
Yeah, they do nothing, absolutely nothing. But they're consuming 70 plus billion and growing of our tax dollars every year.
Well, and Ems and I, many people know, my wife is from the Philippines, and we are still and probably will be forever trying to process her paperwork. She's here in the United States. We're married. She came here on a fiance visa, and yet we're still trying to negotiate these problems. And our immigration system is so horrible, and there literally are regulations that you can't do A until you do B, but you can't do B until you do A. And they're circular, and you're immobilized. It's like, well, wait a minute. Department A tells me I have to have Department B. Department B tells me I can't do B until I get A, and you run around and wasting all of this time and energy and money, countless money. Somebody said to me, well, you need to go back to them and ask, what do they want? And I said, no, they don't work like that. You pay your fee. You submit your paperwork. If it's rejected, you get to pay another fee and submit more paperwork. They don't respond to you. It's just a put and take deal. So, Brad, let's turn here. We've got a few minutes left, and I would like to turn the conversation, as we always do, to what are people going to be looking at? I was talking to my dear friend Hong Lee this morning as we were talking about, because of course jewelbook.com, and this is a platform that I've kind of become increasingly interested in because it helps people set up home-based businesses. But people are going to be under attack. I don't care who gets elected from that standpoint, right? Yeah. The financial situation is going to get very uncomfortable for families, whether it's because of the employment situation or the fact that we are staring down the barrel right now of a $30 trillion federal debt. And the interest payment on that is staggering for the American family. By 2025, the interest payment on the federal debt, regardless of whatever, is the largest single item, larger than the defense budget, largest single item on the federal budget. And we've grown since 2009. We've grown 300%. Right? We go from about 9 trillion to 30 trillion in what?
It's unsustainable, and it has been for years, but very few people are, one, really aware of it, or two, even think it matters. And our public officials there's zero meaningful discussion about this at any level, Val. Zero meaningful discussion. Why? Why not?
Because everybody's running around competing for headlines and competing for ratings.
Yeah.
And telling people that they need to get really, really, really serious about setting alternative income streams, about really, really serious about how are they going to feed their family in this country. That is not sexy. People don't.
No.
And obviously we don't have 100,000 people watching this because we tend to not deal with the sexy stuff. You know what? If we put pictures of bikini girls up here and things like that, we'd probably get a lot more hits.
If we sat in our underwear, we might really get, I don't know. That'd be a scary thought.
Probably get arrested is what we'd probably do.
But yeah, Val, I think people need to really need to dig deep and take responsibility. Really, the government's not going to take care of you guys. Okay, they're just not. We're in a mess. Our city, even at the state level, it's confirmed to me that government is not our savior. They're not our benefactor. They're not there to really help us out, but they can sure screw us. They can sure put the screws on us. We need to take charge. And that's what our plea, at least for me, is, guys, be open to looking at alternative sources. We got home-based business opportunity. Val, I think Jewel Book, I'm hoping maybe they'll go public and I'll invest some money and I'll do really well off an IPO. But I think they're taking advantage of a trend that's needed. We've been talking about this for a couple of years. The paradigm shifting, guys, how we used to live life and do business is changed. How are you going to take advantage of it?
It's huge. And I was just looking for a graphic here that I think I had the other day, and I don't seem to have it here right at my disposal. But yes, the federal debt, I want to say since 2009 has grown from 9 trillion to we're about 27 trillion, 28 trillion right now, and looking at 30 trillion very soon.
That's insane. I mean, that number is it's.
Well, I thought it was going to take 10 more years to get there. We made that leap in 1 year from 20 trillion to 30 trillion. 1 year. I mean, it's shocking. And people need to get really serious about how are they going to create second income streams?
Yeah.
How are they going to work together as a family? You know what? This is something we don't do in this country, and we're starting to go over time here, but I'm telling you, this subject to me is riveting. And I compare our culture to the Philippines. The Philippines, families pretty much all live together, or they live really close to each other. Maybe sometimes in a village, and they work together to because they have to put food on the table. It's not a rich country. And yet here in the United States, because of our wealth, we've lost this culture of working together as families. We've lost the culture of being community driven. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the messages. I think people need to get back to that. People need to sit down with their family and think about this and say, okay, how are we as a family going to develop more income streams? Who has what skills? How can we use the internet to build income? This is something you and I have been talking about for 2 years.
Never been better. Gary Vaynerchuk, I listen to him a lot. He's saying we've never been in a better situation despite everything going on. But you have to believe that, but you have to take action on not there instead of sitting there going, yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, that's great. What are you doing about it? You've got to take action. And you're going to have to go against the grain. It's not there in jobs, guys. It's just not. It's not there in the corporate world. It's just not.
And to right or wrong or whatever, the truth of the matter is, this is not going to be an academic discussion any longer. This is going to be forced.
Yes.
Families are going to be looking at them. They're going to be saying, wait a minute, the unemployment benefits are running out here pretty soon. They're not going to continue those forever. They diminish. You can't have increasing numbers of people just on unemployment more and more all the time forever. Right. So there comes a point in time where you got to figure out some way to fix your issue, and it's got to happen in your home. And you know, I'm just letting everybody know, state of Washington is an example. I read the other day, state of Washington, actually the unemployment fund was empty in May. Now they're pulling it from other places. They're trying to beg the federal government, but there comes a point in time where the states are going to go, you know, we've never seen it in this country. We've never seen a situation where you go to the water, you turn it up, and nothing comes out.
Yeah.
And these are the things that we need to address. And it's not doom and gloom. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is you have the tools available. They're right there, easier than ever before.
Yeah. Where there's challenges, there's equal opportunity, but we have to focus on the opportunity instead of letting the challenges beat us down and blind us to the opportunity. And that's what we're saying, guys. Look at the opportunity that can come out of this for you and your family, and turn off the TV. Just quit playing games. Get serious about life. I'm going to post something Monday, and the question is, and I don't think people are going to like this, are you playing offense or defense in your life?
That's a good one. That's a good subject. All right, my friend, I guess we need to hang it up for another Saturday. And I love this conversation. I know that we are right on the edge of many, many great things. The question is, which direction is this country going to turn? Are we going to pull it back? Or are we going to keep going down that wrong road that has never succeeded? We've got to clean this country up. We have the ability to do that. And we sit there right now with this election. We sit there with this technology that we have. And we're encouraging people to step out there, take control of their life, get involved in the game, win.
And listen to people that know what's going on. Turn off people that don't have any solutions. And there's more of them than don't. And I tell people honestly, hey, if we seem to be the people, you decide, are we people that you want to partner with? Are we credible? Do we know what we're talking about? Do we have your interests in heart or what? You got to decide that. I'm going to say, yes, we do. But you have to make that determination for yourself.
And with that closing thought, Brad, thank you so much. I'm sorry we couldn't connect with Paul. He's just, you know, I watch what he writes on social media, and he's so brilliant and so concise, and yet technology down today. But all right, buddy. Love you guys. See you later.